It is 4 minutes after 10 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Just stay there a minute, will you? Hang on. Right, what do you reckon? Should we go in on this? Should we do it? We haven't done it for a while. It's been a long, long time. Who remembers the last time we did? When was the last time we did it? I mean, we touched on some issues. We've touched on issues, haven't we? We've talked about huge shortages in all sorts of sectors, from veterinarians to fruit pickers and pretty much everywhere in between, the decimation of the hospitality sector. We've talked about the difficulties of exporting. We've talked about the almost impossibility of being a touring musician these days in continental Europe. We have touched on some of the issues, but we haven't for a long time. Keith, when did you last get the tin out? Can you remember when you last got the tin out? There'll be people listening to this programme who have no idea what I'm talking about. Such a continuing march of LBC's burgeoning popularity. Well, Radio 4 hemorrhages listeners and we scale ever dizzier new heights. There will be people listening to this programme who don't know they don't even know what the tin is. What's the tin they're saying? And who's Keith? They're saying at the moment. Must be a little less niche. I'm talking about Brexit. Oh yeah, Brexit. Talking about that thing that was supposed to make us wealthier. Do you remember? And it was supposed to make the NHS more efficient. Do you remember that? And it was supposed to stop problems with immigration, and it was supposed to ease the passage of refugee processing. It was supposed to make us better off. It was supposed to make trade easier. It was supposed to get... Do you remember that? You remember all those promises? Obviously, if you fell for them, you're either currently in the business of turning off your radio, tuning into something less taxing, perhaps, a bit of Mantovani over on Classic FM, or if you fell for it, you're in the process of emerging, butterfly-like from the chrysalis of your own idiocy, shrugging off your past as a creepy, crawly caterpillar and just testing out those new wings of comprehension, because finally you realise that trusting Nadine Dorries over Mark Carney was probably not your finest hour. Trusting Andrea Leadsom and Andrew Bridgen over some of the finest minds in this country was probably not the cleverest move you've ever made. Trusting Nigel Farage over pretty much every Prime Minister the country has ever had, bar Boris Johnson, well, and Rishi Sunak now, I suppose, was probably not the cleverest. Anyway, we digress. Because here's the thing. I've even got clips. Oh, yeah. You ready for this? So one of the weird things about the recent conversations is that there's a particularly ridiculous article in the Daily Mail yesterday, inevitably, proving this point almost to its apotheosis. The only people really talking about Brexit at the moment are the people who are becoming increasingly unhinged by Twitter, oddly. So they're complaining constantly about both Brexit and Twitter. But they're not complaining about the reality of Brexit. They're complaining about a largely non-existent constituency of people who supposedly blame everything bad on Brexit. Now, I speak as one of the kings of the Remoaners. I mean, there's a lot of kings. That's the problem with being such an open and democratic organisation. There's a lot of kings. I don't know who is the king of the kings. Who's the king of the kings? Who is the king of the Remoaners? There'll probably be a fist fight between me and Gary Lineker. I don't know who is the king of the Remoaners. It's a bit like Game of Thrones, like the worst ever Game of Thrones. So nobody thinks everything bad is a consequence of Brexit. Literally nobody thinks that. Anybody who thinks that is a weapon. That's a phrase I've started using, a word I've started using, because I like it. I think it conveys a mixture of contempt and sort of condescension. You're a weapon. Don't be a weapon. Never be a... So nobody would claim that. In fact, you can even look at inflation rates in other countries and point to the fact that by some measures we're doing less bad than other countries. But that's stupid. That is the behaviour of a weapon. Because all you need to do to contemplate or consider the impact of Brexit is look at where we would be if we hadn't done it. And there is now nobody worthy of the sobriquet sensible who would claim that we would not be better off and better placed and better functioning if we'd never done it in the first place. Even with this refugee crisis, largely inflated and manufactured for the reasons that I explained to you on Monday, they're going to have to resurrect immigration as a scandal because everything else has blown up in their faces. Literally everything else. That budget that Kwasi Kwarteng announced and the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail were queuing up to describe it. A bloke called Alistair Heath in the Daily Telegraph said it the best budget I've ever seen in my lifetime. Daily Mail said finally a true Tory budget, and then boom, blew up in their faces because it was built on absolute balderdash. But they were too thick to realise. And they were all Brexiters. Funny that, isn't it? Same people who thought that budget was brilliant, which we learned yesterday, almost collapsed the country. It brought the entire nation to the brink of financial oblivion, we discovered yesterday. A little bit more on that later in the programme. And it was done and cheered by precisely the same people who told you Brexit would be a good idea. The governor of the Bank of England has said that Britain was hours from economic meltdown after Kwasi Kwarteng introduced his mini budget. So hours from economic meltdown, or the best budget of my lifetime, according to Alistair Heath in the Daily Telegraph, and finally a true Tory budget, according to the front page of the Daily Mail. We are a ridiculous country at the moment because some of the loudest voices in the media and the public rely upon the media to do two things: to give them the information that they need to make informed decisions and to speak truth to power. And those two duties have been completely neglected and abandoned by huge swathes of the media, some of them even reduced to telling you and me to stop talking about that really stupid thing that we did 6 years ago, because it's really embarrassing. And there's no way I am ever going to admit that I was responsible for contributing to that ludicrous decision. So everyone else should just shut up and stop talking about it now. In fact, I would say that the patron saint of Brexiters at the moment is not Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson or Digby Pudding Jones. I would say that the patron saint of Brexiters at this point in British history is Gavin Williamson. I beg your pardon, Sir Gavin Williamson. And you thought I was exaggerating when I said that the country was ridiculous. Sir Gavin Williamson. Because the mood, the mode, the message from these people, from these saboteurs, from these nation-damaging cretins seems to be, to me, Brexit should go away and shut up. Brexit should go away and shut up. That's the message now. Well, I'm not going to shut up, and I'm certainly not going to go away, because the damage that's been done to this country can no longer be denied. Can it? No, it can't.